My name is Elena Marsh. I was 35 years old when my mother threw 2 sleeping bags onto the floor in front of me and my children. "Your sister's family gets the guest room," she said. "You can sleep on the floor." One sleeping bag landed near my shoes. The other slid across the hardwood and stopped beside my 5-year-old daughter, Lucy. She immediately knelt and placed both hands on it, as though my mother had given her a present she was supposed to appreciate. My 8-year-old son, Caleb, didn't touch the other bag. He looked at the hallway leading toward the bedrooms, then at my older sister, Brooke, and finally at me. He understood what had happened before Lucy did. Brooke's husband, Trevor, had already carried their luggage into the guest room. Their 12-year-old son, Mason, had been given the daybed in my mother's office. Brooke stood near the stairs holding a glass of wine, perfectly comfortable with the arrangement. There were 3 real beds available in the house. Brooke's family had received all 3. My children had received the floor. And I was apparently expected to build myself a bed from the loose cushions in my mother's den. I stared at the sleeping bags for a moment, waiting for my mother to laugh and admit it was some cruel joke. She didn't. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady, "Lucy is 5. Caleb is 8. You invited us to stay here." "And you are staying here," she replied. "The den is perfectly comfortable. There isn't a bed in the den. You've slept on couches before." I looked at Brooke. I gave her the opportunity to say something, to offer the office, suggest that the children share the daybed, or admit that the arrangement was unfair. Instead, she laughed. "Should have booked a hotel." Trevor lowered his eyes. He knew it was wrong, but silence was how he survived being married to Brooke. Mason had nothing to do with the decision, so I refused to let my anger settle on him. My mother folded her arms. "Brooke and Trevor need privacy," she said, "and Mason is too old to sleep on the floor. So Caleb isn't. You always have to make things difficult, Elena." That sentence almost made me laugh. I had driven more than 3 hours from Charlotte with 2 children, a trunk full of food, and gifts for the retirement weekend my mother had insisted the whole family attend. I was also preparing to do something for her that would postpone one of the most important plans I had ever made for my children. But according to my mother, I was the one making things difficult. Lucy began unrolling her sleeping bag. "Mommy, can Caleb sleep next to me?" Her voice was quiet. There was no anger in it. That was what hurt the most. She was already adapting. She was already learning to make herself smaller so the adults around her would remain comfortable. Caleb knelt beside her and helped straighten the fabric. He didn't complain because he had learned from me. He had watched me absorb disrespect from my family and call it patience. He had watched me stay quiet so gatherings would remain peaceful. Now both of my children were kneeling on my mother's floor, accepting the position she had assigned them. I could tolerate my mother overlooking me. I had done it for most of my life. What I could not tolerate was watching that lesson pass into another generation. I turned toward my mother. "I'm asking you one last time. Are you really expecting my children to sleep on this floor while Brooke's family takes every available bed?" Her expression hardened. "I've already made the arrangements. Stop creating drama in front of the children." That was her answer. I crossed the room and rolled the sleeping bags back up. Brooke sighed dramatically. "Oh, come on. It's one weekend." "For you," I said. "For them, it's a message." My mother shook her head. "They're children. They don't think like that unless you teach them to." Caleb's face changed when she said it. He understood every word. I knelt between my children and kept my voice soft. "Pack your things, babies." Lucy looked confused. "Are we going home?" "Not tonight, but we're not sleeping here." My mother stepped toward me. "Elena, don't be ridiculous." I collected our bags without arguing. Caleb carried his backpack and held Lucy's hand while I moved everything toward the front door. No one offered them a bed. No one asked them to stay. Brooke watched as though my departure were an inconvenience she had predicted. Trevor remained silent. My mother followed me onto the porch, insisting I was embarrassing her in front of the family. I loaded the final bag into the trunk and secured both children in the back seat. It was approximately 10 o'clock when I pulled away from my mother's house. She believed I would calm down overnight. She believed I would call the next morning, apologize for overreacting, and continue with the financial commitment I had made. She had spent years teaching me that being the dependable daughter meant fixing every crisis, even when I had played no part in creating it. What she didn't know was that watching Lucy kneel beside that sleeping bag had changed something in me. Before the night ended, I would quietly cancel the one thing my mother believed she could never lose. She wouldn't discover what I had done until 2 days later. By the time I looked at my phone, I would have 83 missed calls from her. Before I explain what I canceled and why losing it terrified my mother more than watching her grandchildren leave, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like this video. If you have ever been expected to keep the peace while someone else kept crossing the line, then you already understand why this story matters. To understand how 2 sleeping bags brought my family to that point, I need to take you back to the role I had occupied for most of my life. Brooke was 3 years older than me, and from childhood, she knew how to command a room. She was charming, expressive, and ambitious. She could turn a small achievement into a family celebration and a bad decision into a crisis everyone else was expected to help resolve. My mother admired that about her. Dana Whitmore, our mother, liked accomplishments people could see. She liked photographs, announcements, compliments from neighbors, and stories she could repeat to relatives. Brooke gave her plenty of those stories. I was different. I was quiet. I planned before I acted. I rarely asked for help because I had learned early that asking created disappointment, while solving a problem created approval. If Brooke was the daughter my mother celebrated, I was the daughter she relied upon. When something needed organizing, Dana called me. When a bill confused her, she sent it to me. When Brooke faced another temporary setback, my mother asked whether I could help. Dana often called me her strong daughter. For years, I mistook that description for affection. Eventually, I understood what it meant. Strong daughters were expected to need less, forgive faster, and contribute more. Brooke received protection because everyone described her as sensitive. I received responsibility because everyone described me as capable. That pattern followed us into adulthood. Brooke opened a home decor boutique and filled social media with photographs that made it appear successful. My mother shared every post and referred to Brooke as an entrepreneur. I became an operations director for a regional medical device distributor. My work was stable, demanding, and largely invisible to my family. Dana struggled to explain what I did, so she usually reduced it to, "Elena works in an office." That never bothered me as much as it probably should have. I wasn't interested in impressing relatives. After my divorce, my priorities became even simpler. Keep Caleb and Lucy secure, stay out of unnecessary debt, and build the kind of stable home I had always wanted for them. For years, I saved carefully toward that home. Every bonus, tax refund, and amount left after our monthly expenses went into the same account. I wanted a modest 3-bedroom place where Caleb and Lucy could each have a room. It wasn't about luxury, it was about permanence. I wanted my children to know they had a place that belonged to them, one no relative could take away or reassign according to who mattered more that weekend. My mother knew about those savings. She also knew I had difficulty refusing her when she said the family needed me. Dana had recently retired from her job as an administrative coordinator in a public school district. She had spent more than 20 years shaping her identity around the house near Wilmington, where Brooke and I had grown up. The house was more than property to her. It was proof that she had built a respectable life. It was where she hosted birthdays, retirement dinners, and every family gathering that allowed her to stand at the center of the room. But beneath the polished photographs and carefully maintained front yard, my mother was frightened. She had made financial decisions she did not fully explain to me. Something had gone wrong. A deadline was approaching, and the house was suddenly in danger. At first, Dana described it as a temporary cash flow problem. Then she called me crying. "Elena, I wouldn't ask if there were another way. Those words had worked on me before. They worked because she knew exactly which part of me to reach. The daughter who believed that possessing the ability to help created an obligation to do it. I asked questions. I reviewed the information she gave me. I understood that helping her would delay my plan for Caleb and Lucy, but I also understood what losing that house would mean to her. So I agreed to make a substantial financial commitment. Dana cried with relief. "You've always been the one I could count on," she told me. I wanted to hear love in those words. Instead, what she had given me was a job description. A few weeks later, she invited all of us to spend the weekend at the house and celebrate her retirement properly. She said it would be good to have her daughters and grandchildren under the same roof. I almost declined. Long weekends with Brooke usually ended with me working while she accepted praise. But Dana sounded unusually warm, and part of me hoped the help I was giving her had changed something between us. Maybe, I thought, she finally understood what my sacrifices cost. Maybe this time, my children and I would arrive as family rather than as the people expected to adapt around everyone else. Before the trip, Dana contacted me more than once to confirm that the help I had promised was still coming. Each time, I told her yes. She never contacted me to ask what my children needed for the weekend. That should have warned me. But I packed our bags, loaded the car, and drove toward Wilmington, believing I was helping my mother preserve the place she called our family home. I had no idea that before the weekend ended, she would show me exactly who that home was meant to protect and who she expected to sleep on its floor. We reached my mother's house late Friday afternoon. Dana was waiting on the porch when I pulled into the driveway. She waved enthusiastically at Caleb and Lucy, but the moment I opened the trunk, she glanced past their overnight bags and focused on the insulated containers I had brought. "You remembered the food," she said with relief. "I told you I would. I knew I could count on you." There were those words again. Brooke and her family had arrived 2 hours earlier. Their luggage was already upstairs, and Mason's game console had been set up in the office. Brooke came outside just long enough to announce that the drive had exhausted her before leaving me to carry everything inside. Caleb took one of the lighter bags without being asked. Lucy carried the gift she had chosen for Dana, a picture frame decorated with painted flowers. "Grandma, I made this for your retirement picture." Dana accepted it, kissed Lucy's forehead, and placed it on a table near the door. "That's lovely, sweetheart." Lucy waited for her to open it properly or ask about the flowers. Dana was already calling toward the kitchen to ask whether I had brought the dessert she requested. I noticed Lucy's disappointment, but I did what I had always done. I redirected her. "Why don't you help me put the food away?" For the first few hours, the weekend looked almost normal. Dana moved through the house, arranging serving dishes and talking about the relatives who would visit the following afternoon. Brooke sat at the kitchen counter drinking wine while I prepared dinner. Trevor watched television with Mason. Caleb entertained Lucy in the den. Every so often, Dana would stop beside me and lower her voice. "Everything is still arranged for Monday, right?" She meant the transfer. "Yes," I said the first time. An hour later, she asked again. "The bank won't delay anything, will it?" "It's scheduled." After dinner, she followed me into the kitchen while I loaded the dishwasher. "You're sure the money will clear before the deadline?" "Yes, Mom." She exhaled and touched my shoulder. "You have no idea how much peace that gives me." At that moment, I still believed I was helping her preserve our family home. Then bedtime approached. Brooke announced that she and Trevor were tired and went upstairs. Mason disappeared into the office. I asked Dana where she wanted me to put our bags. That was when she brought out the sleeping bags. Everything that happened afterward unfolded exactly as I described. The floor, Brooke's laughter, Dana's refusal to reconsider, Lucy kneeling, and Caleb watching me to see whether I would accept it. By 10 o'clock, my children and I were back in the car. For the first 15 minutes after leaving, neither child spoke. The road was dark and unfamiliar. I kept both hands on the steering wheel while my phone vibrated in the cup holder. Dana called twice. Brooke sent one message: "You always ruin everything." I turned the phone face down. "Mommy?" Lucy said from the back seat. "Yes, baby?" Was Grandma mad because we came? The question struck harder than anything Dana or Brooke had said. "No, you didn't do anything wrong." "Then why couldn't we have a bed?" I looked at her through the rearview mirror. She was holding the picture frame she had made for Dana. In the confusion, she had picked it up from the table and carried it back outside. "I don't know why Grandma made that choice," I said, "but it wasn't because you did anything wrong." Caleb stared through his window. "She likes Mason better." "Caleb." "She does." He didn't say it angrily. He said it like someone confirming an observation. "She always lets him choose first. He gets the big birthday gifts. She puts his pictures in the living room. Lucy's picture went by the door." I had spent years telling myself the children didn't notice Dana's favoritism. That lie had protected me from making a difficult decision. It had never protected them. "Why didn't you tell me you felt that way?" He shrugged. "I thought it would make you sad." My 8-year-old son had been protecting me from the truth about my own family. That realization filled me with shame. "You never have to hide something unfair to protect me," I told him. "That is not your responsibility. Are we going back tomorrow?" "No." Lucy leaned forward against her seatbelt. "Are we in trouble?" "No, sweetheart. We are leaving because you deserve somewhere safe and comfortable to sleep." Her shoulders relaxed slightly. I found a hotel with an available room and pulled into the parking lot. The room had 2 beds, clean sheets, and a small table near the window. Nothing about it was special. To my children, it looked magnificent. Lucy bounced once on the mattress before remembering she was tired. Caleb checked the lock on the door, set his backpack beside one bed, and asked whether Lucy could sleep with him. I helped them change, turned off the main light, and left the bathroom light glowing through the partially open door. Within 20 minutes, Lucy was asleep. Caleb remained awake. "Mom?" "Yes?" "Are you mad at Grandma?" "I'm disappointed in her." "Is that different?" "Sometimes." He thought about that. "Are we still family if we don't go back?" I sat on the edge of the bed. "Yes, but being family doesn't mean we have to stay somewhere people treat us badly. Grandma says family forgives. Forgiveness and permission aren't the same thing." He nodded as though he was filing the sentence away for later. When his breathing finally slowed, I moved to the small table near the window and opened my banking application. The scheduled transfer was listed beneath my account balance: $58,600. For years, I had saved that money toward a home for Caleb and Lucy. It represented postponed vacations, older cars, packed lunches, bonuses I never spent, and hundreds of ordinary decisions no one in my family had seen. Dana knew what the savings meant. She also knew I had agreed to surrender most of them because she said losing the house would destroy her. The transfer was scheduled to process on Monday morning. It had not yet left my account. A button beneath it read, "Cancel scheduled transfer." I stared at that button for several minutes. My anger told me to press it immediately. My conditioning told me that doing so would make me responsible for everything that followed. What finally guided me was neither anger nor guilt. It was Lucy's question: why couldn't we have a bed? Dana expected me to delay a home for my children so she could preserve hers. Yet inside the home I was helping save, my children had been given the floor. The financial transfer and the sleeping arrangement were not separate issues. They were expressions of the same belief. Brooke's comfort came first. Dana's choices came second. My resources covered whatever remained. My children adapted. That arrangement had survived because I kept cooperating with it. I selected the cancellation option. The application asked whether I was certain. I looked toward the bed where Caleb and Lucy were sleeping. Then I confirmed. A message appeared: scheduled transfer canceled. I saved the confirmation, closed the application, and placed my phone on the table. I did not call Dana. I did not threaten her with the cancellation. I did not offer to restore the money in exchange for an apology. If I had done any of those things, the transfer would have remained leverage in an argument. I wasn't interested in winning an argument. I was withdrawing my participation. The relief came first. It lasted perhaps 30 seconds. Then the guilt arrived. My mind produced every possible consequence. Dana standing outside the house with nowhere to go. Relatives blaming me. Brooke telling everyone I had punished our mother over a sleeping bag. My father, if he had still been alive, asking why I had allowed the family home to disappear. I opened the banking application again. The cancellation remained reversible only through creating and authorizing a new transfer. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then Lucy turned in her sleep and reached toward Caleb. He moved closer without waking. I closed the application. The next morning, we drove back to Charlotte. I kept the weekend simple. We picked up breakfast, went home, unpacked, and spent the afternoon watching movies. Dana sent several messages. You made your point. The children would have been fine. Call me when you're ready to behave like an adult. She never asked whether Caleb and Lucy were all right. Brooke's messages were less restrained. Mom cried all night because of you. You embarrassed her in her own home. Nobody told you to leave. The third statement was technically true. Nobody had told us to leave. They had only made staying humiliating. I muted both conversations. Monday morning came, the day the transfer had been scheduled to process. I went to work, reviewed inventory reports, attended 2 meetings, and checked my phone only during lunch. There were no messages about the money. For a moment, I wondered whether Dana had found another solution. The thought brought relief, followed by a small ache. Part of me still wanted her to solve the problem, call me and say she understood why I had withdrawn. But Dana had spent years assuming my promises were more reliable than her own planning. She had no reason to check the transfer until the lender expected the money. Tuesday passed quietly, too. At home, Caleb asked whether Dana had called to apologize. No. Will she? I don't know. Lucy wanted to know whether Grandma still had her picture frame. I told her I wasn't sure. That night, after the children were asleep, I found the frame on the kitchen counter where Lucy had left it after we returned. I moved it into her bedroom. Wednesday morning, 2 days after the transfer should have processed, I was presenting a distribution update when my phone began vibrating. Once, then again, then several times in rapid succession. I glanced at the screen. Dana. I silenced it and continued speaking. When the meeting ended 40 minutes later, I had 17 missed calls. There were 11 voicemails. The first sounded confused. Elena, call me when you get this. The bank is saying the transfer didn't arrive. The second sounded impatient. I need you to check your account. Something is wrong. By the fourth message, she knew. Elena, it says you canceled it. I don't understand why you would do something like that without speaking to me. By the seventh, confusion had become accusation. You cannot play games with this. This is my home. The 10th message contained the first hint of fear. Please call me. The lender needs the funds. I have a deadline. The 11th returned to authority. You need to fix this today. I placed the phone face down on my desk. It continued vibrating. By lunchtime, Dana had called 39 times. Brooke called 12 times, but I did not count hers. The number that would remain with me belonged to Dana alone. At first, I thought the repetition showed panic. Then I noticed the pattern. Whenever one tactic failed, Dana changed tactics. She ordered me to call. She reminded me that she was my mother. She accused me of humiliating her. She said Brooke's family had required the guest room because Trevor worked long hours. She said children enjoyed sleeping bags. She insisted Lucy would not even remember the weekend. Then she said I was endangering a retired woman over a misunderstanding. At 4 p.m, she mentioned Caleb and Lucy for the first time. You are teaching those children to hold grudges. Not once did she ask how they felt. By the time I left work, my phone showed 83 missed calls from Dana. Exactly 83. I sat in my parked car and stared at the number. When my children had left her house at 10 o'clock at night, Dana called twice. When her money failed to arrive, she called 83 times. That comparison answered a question I had spent my life avoiding. Dana's urgency was not created by losing us. It was created by losing access to what I provided. I did not return the calls. Instead, I sent one written message. I canceled the transfer before it processed. I will not restore it. Caleb and Lucy will not be placed beneath other family members and then expected to sacrifice their future to preserve your comfort. Communicate with me in writing from now on. Her response arrived almost immediately. You're taking my house because of sleeping arrangements? I answered, I am not taking your house. I am choosing not to give you my savings. Then Brooke called again. This time, I answered, what is wrong with you? She demanded before I could speak. Mom can barely breathe. If she is having a medical emergency, call emergency services. You know what I mean. I know she expected money that belonged to me. You promised it. I agreed to help based on what I believed our relationship was. Oh, please. This is about the floor. It's about a family system where you receive every comfort and I receive every obligation. Brooke gave a short, bitter laugh. So this is jealousy. No, it has always bothered you that Mom and I are close. What bothers me is that Mom borrowed against her house for you, and now both of you believe my children should surrender their future to repair it. There was a brief silence. Brooke lowered her voice. Mom told you? She told me enough. Then you know my business had a difficult year. I know you promised to repay her. I am repaying her. How much did you pay last month? That isn't your business. You made it my business when you expected me to cover the shortage. I never asked you for anything. You stood there laughing while the woman saving your mother's house was told to put her children on the floor. Brooke inhaled sharply. Listen to yourself. You sound insane. No, I sound finished. I ended the call. Until then, Dana had described the crisis to me in fragments. 18 months earlier, Brooke wanted to expand her boutique. She planned to lease a larger storefront, increase inventory, and create an online fulfillment area. Traditional financing would have required documentation the business could not produce. Sales were inconsistent, and Brooke already carried debt. Dana stepped in. She borrowed against the house. Brooke described the money as temporary. Once the expansion increased revenue, she would repay Dana monthly. Dana believed her because Dana had always treated Brooke's confidence as evidence. The expansion did not create the promised income. Expenses increased. Sales did not rise enough to cover them. Brooke made a few partial payments, missed others, and repeatedly assured Dana the next season would be stronger. Dana covered what she could from her salary. After retirement, that became impossible. By the time she admitted the situation to me, the loan was delinquent and the lender had issued a reinstatement figure, $58,600. Dana did not initially explain that most of the borrowed money had gone to Brooke. She said she had made some choices to help the family. I discovered the rest while reviewing the account records she sent me. Even then, I had agreed to help. I told myself Dana had made a mistake out of love. I told myself Brooke's business failure was unfortunate, not malicious. I told myself preserving the house mattered more than assigning blame. The payment would consume most of the savings I had intended for a down payment, but I believed I could rebuild them. What I had not considered was what my agreement taught Dana and Brooke. Dana learned that she could risk her home for Brooke because I would absorb the consequence. Brooke learned that her failure could delay my children's security without requiring any change in her own behavior. I was the only person being asked to treat the crisis as an emergency. That evening, Dana sent me copies of the lender's notices again, as if I had forgotten the numbers. The reinstatement deadline was approaching. If she failed to cure the default, the lender would continue with its remedies. Beneath the documents, Dana wrote, "There is no other option." But there was another option. The house had significant equity. Selling it voluntarily would hurt. Dana would lose the place where she had lived for more than 20 years. She would have to accept a smaller home and a different version of retirement. but the sale could satisfy the secured debt and leave her with money for a stable transition. Dana was not facing unavoidable homelessness. She was facing the loss of the exact life she preferred. For years, my family had treated my sacrifices as practical and their sacrifices as unthinkable. I sent another message. List the house before the lender takes control of the timeline. Protect the equity you still have. Her reply came in capital letters. This is your father's house too. My father had been gone for years, but Dana invoked him whenever she needed moral authority. I closed my eyes and heard his voice as clearly as if he were sitting beside me. He had loved that house. He had repaired the porch, planted the trees, and measured our heights against the pantry door frame. For several minutes, grief weakened every boundary I had built. Then I remembered that my father had also loved Caleb and Lucy. Dana was asking me to turn his memory into a debt my children had to pay. I refused. Over the next several days, the pressure expanded beyond Dana and Brooke. An aunt sent me a message saying mothers deserved grace. A cousin asked how I could place money above family. Another relative warned that I would regret destroying the home where we had grown up. The messages sounded different, but most repeated the same version of events. Elena became angry over a sleeping bag and canceled the payment, keeping her elderly mother from becoming homeless. Dana had removed Brooke's debt, my children's future, the available equity, and her own choices from the account. She had reduced the story until I appeared cruel. I did not begin a public campaign to defend myself. I did not distribute her financial documents or expose Brooke's business records. I sent one response to the relatives who contacted me. Dana has options that protect her from homelessness. I am not responsible for discussing her finances without her consent. My decision is final. Please do not contact my children or involve them in this dispute. Some respected it, others interpreted privacy as guilt. That hurt more than I expected. I had spent years building a reputation as the reliable one. Within days, Dana transformed that history into evidence against me. If I had always helped, they reasoned, refusing now must mean I had become selfish. That was the trap hidden inside being dependable. The more consistently you rescue people, the more offensive your first boundary appears. At home, I tried to keep the conflict away from Caleb and Lucy, but children noticed changes in the air. Caleb saw me turn my phone face down during dinner. Is Grandma still calling? Not as much. Is she still mad? Yes. Because we left? Because I made another decision after we left. He waited. I had no intention of explaining loan defaults to an 8-year-old, but I also did not want secrecy to make him feel responsible. Grandma asked me for a lot of money, I said. I had agreed to give it to her. After what happened, I decided the money needs to stay here for our family. Caleb's expression became worried. Is Grandma poor now? No. Will she lose her house? She may have to sell it. His face fell. Because I didn't sleep on the floor? There it was, the consequence Dana's version of the story would eventually place on him. I moved my chair closer. No, listen to me carefully. Grandma made financial decisions before we arrived. Those decisions created the problem. You and Lucy did not create it. Leaving the house did not create it. My decision is mine, not yours. But if we stayed, the problem would still exist. I would simply have used money meant for us to make it disappear for her. He looked at his plate. Do you want to give it to her? Part of me wanted to say no immediately. Instead, I gave him the honest answer. I want Grandma to be safe. I also want you and Lucy to be safe. I'm learning that I don't have to destroy one to prove I care about the other. He nodded slowly. That conversation clarified something I had not understood. If I restored the transfer because Caleb felt guilty, I would teach him that his discomfort had endangered Grandma's home. He would carry responsibility for an adult debt he had never known existed. Protecting him meant holding the boundary even when he questioned it. The next morning, I sent Dana another written message. Do not discuss the house, the transfer, or the cancellation with Caleb or Lucy. Do not tell them my decision caused your financial situation. Any future contact with them will be supervised and will depend on you respecting this boundary. Donna responded, "You are using my grandchildren to control me." I wrote, "No, I am protecting them from an adult conflict." She did not reply for several hours. Then she sent, "Your sister would never do this to me." That sentence no longer produced the reaction she expected. Brooke would never have done it because Brooke was never placed in the position of financing everyone else's decisions. Brooke called that evening from a different number after I stopped answering hers. "Mom says you've banned her from seeing the kids. I ended unsupervised and overnight visits." That's the same thing. It isn't. You are punishing everyone. I am establishing boundaries. Stop using therapy language to justify revenge. This isn't revenge. I haven't taken anything from either of you. You took away money you promised. It never belonged to you. It was for Mom. It was repairing a debt created for your business. Her voice tightened. You think you're better than me because you have savings. No, I think you should participate in solving the problem you helped create. My business can't afford $58,000. Neither can my children. They're children. They don't need a house right now. The sentence settled between us. Brooke heard it only after she had said it. I kept my voice calm. Your family needed the guest room. Your son needed the daybed. Your business needed Mom's equity. Mom needs my savings. And my children, according to you, can wait for everything. That isn't what I meant. It is exactly what you meant. You're twisting my words. I don't need to twist them. I ended the call. Brooke's husband contacted me the following day. Trevor did not defend the sleeping arrangement. He did not apologize for remaining silent either. His message was brief. I'm trying to understand the actual numbers. Brooke says your transfer was the only plan. Is that true? I answered with equal brevity. Dana can sell voluntarily and protect the remaining equity. Brooke has the loan information, Trevor replied several hours later. Understood. That response mattered because it was the first indication that Brooke's household would no longer treat me as the only available solution. Until then, Trevor had benefited from the family arrangement by avoiding it. Dana protected Brooke. I repaired Dana's problems. Trevor kept his finances separate and remained quiet. My cancellation pushed the consequence closer to him. Silence became more expensive. 2 days later, Dana sent what she called an apology. I'm sorry the sleeping arrangements hurt your feelings. I was trying to make everyone comfortable. I should have explained it better. Please restore the transfer, and we can discuss the rest after the deadline. I read the message 3 times. There was no acknowledgement that she had given every available bed to Brooke's family. No acknowledgement that Lucy was 5. No acknowledgement that Caleb had understood the favoritism. No acknowledgement that Dana expected the children whose future I was sacrificing to accept the floor. She was sorry my feelings had interfered with her payment. I responded, an apology is not an acknowledgement if it describes your deliberate decision as my misunderstanding. You assigned the beds according to who you believed mattered most. You expected my children to accept what remained. Restoring the transfer is not a condition for repairing our relationship, Dana called immediately. I let it ring. Then she wrote, What do you want me to say? I answered, Only say what you believe. If you do not believe the way you treated them was wrong, do not perform an apology to obtain money. Her next message arrived 5 minutes later. I cannot believe you would let me lose everything because I chose the wrong room. I typed a response, deleted it, and tried again. You are not facing this because you chose the wrong room. You are facing it because you borrowed against your home, concealed the seriousness of the default, and assumed I would surrender my savings. The room showed me that rescuing you would not change the way you value us. She did not respond that night. For the first time since discovering the cancellation, Dana stopped calling. The silence should have felt peaceful. Instead, it frightened me. Without her voice filling every hour, my imagination took over. I pictured her alone at the kitchen table, surrounded by lender notices. I pictured the red marks on the pantry door where my father had recorded our childhood heights. I pictured a stranger removing the porch swing he had built. I opened the banking application again. My savings remained untouched. Creating a new transfer would have taken only minutes. That was the difficult truth about boundaries. Maintaining one often required repeating the same decision after the anger that created clarity had faded. I no longer had Brooke's laughter in my ears. I had my mother's fear. Compassion made surrender feel reasonable. But compassion without judgment had created this system. I reviewed the documents again. The property value exceeded the secured balances. Dana had a painful but survivable exit. A voluntary sale would preserve more of her equity than allowing the lender's process to advance. She did not need my money to live. She needed it to avoid changing. Those were not the same thing. I sent one practical message. You still have time to list the property and control the sale. Waiting will reduce your options. I will not fund the reinstatement, but I hope you protect your equity. Dana replied the next morning. I don't need financial advice from the daughter doing this to me. The deadline drew closer. Brooke's social media activity stopped. Dana canceled the retirement gathering she had planned. Relatives who had accused me of overreacting became quieter as they learned the debt involved Brooke's business. Dana did not voluntarily correct the story, but financial crises resist simple narratives. Eventually, people began asking why Brooke was not helping. That question destabilized the family hierarchy more than anything I could have said. Brooke called me again. Trevor wants us to pay Mom's moving costs. That sounds like something you should discuss with Trevor. He got that idea from you. I told him Mom had equity and could sell. I didn't tell him how to manage your household. He says if Mom loses the house because of my boutique, then we have to help. The house is at risk because Mom borrowed and you did not repay her. You always make everything sound so simple. No, I make responsibility sound specific. She became quiet. Then she said, if Mom sells that house, nothing will ever be the same. I know. Doesn't that bother you? Of course it does. You don't sound bothered. I don't need to collapse for my feelings to be real. Brooke's voice sharpened. You've wanted this. You've wanted Mom to see that I'm a failure. No, I wanted Mom to see that I was her daughter too. Brooke said nothing. For one brief moment, I thought she might understand. Then she answered, this won't make her love you more. The cruelty was precise because it contained the fear I had never admitted aloud. I had agreed to the transfer, partly because I hoped being indispensable would finally make me equal. Canceling it meant accepting that money could not purchase what I wanted. You're right, I said. It won't. I ended the call. That conversation changed the conflict for me. Until then, some hidden part of me still imagined Dana returning with the perfect apology and repairing everything. I still pictured Brooke admitting the pattern and asking how she could make amends. But boundaries could not depend on other people transforming. I had to choose them based on who they had shown themselves to be. The evening before the lender's deadline, Dana called once, only once. I answered. Her voice sounded smaller than it had in the voicemails. Are you really going to let tomorrow come without fixing this? I'm not restoring the transfer. This is the last chance. I understand. You keep saying that as if you're talking about an office deadline. This is our home. It is your property, Mom. It was your father's home. I know. He worked his whole life for it, and you borrowed against it. I did that to help your sister. You made that decision. Because family helps family. Then Brooke needs to help you. She doesn't have the money. Neither do I, not without taking it from the future I planned for my children. You can earn it again? The words were so familiar that they barely hurt. Dana believed my sacrifices were renewable because I was competent. If I lost years of progress, I could work harder. If I felt overlooked, I could be mature. If my children received less, they could adapt. Brooke's discomfort was immediate. Mine was recoverable. Mom, selling the house will not leave you with nothing. You don't know that. I reviewed the balances you sent me. The market could change. The sale could take months. Where am I supposed to go? To a smaller place you can afford. So I'm supposed to spend retirement in some little apartment while you sit on nearly $60,000? It isn't money I found. I saved it. For what? A prettier house? For a secure home where Caleb and Lucy each have a place that belongs to them. They already have somewhere to live. So do you. What you may lose is the particular house you prefer. She began crying, not loudly. Dana rarely lost control completely. Her crying sounded tired and frightened. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "Your father would be ashamed of you." The sentence struck exactly where she intended. My throat tightened. I pictured my father at the kitchen table, balancing household receipts. I pictured him carrying a sleeping Lucy during one of his last visits. I remembered how seriously he had treated promises. For a moment, I nearly told Dana I would reconsider. Then another memory surfaced. My father teaching Caleb to ride a bicycle, jogging beside him with one hand beneath the seat. When Caleb fell, my father did not shame him for needing help. He knelt, checked his knees, and told him that being frightened did not mean he should surrender control. Dana did not own my father's memory. She could not speak for him simply because he was no longer present to disagree. "I loved Dad," I said. "I will not use him as a reason to teach my children they matter less." "You are choosing money over your mother." "No, I am refusing to choose your house over my children. If you let this deadline pass, do not expect me to forgive you. That is your decision." She stopped crying. Her voice became cold. "You have changed." "Yes, I meant it." We ended the call without saying goodbye. That night, I slept badly. At 2:13 a.m., I opened my banking application. The balance was still there. I imagined creating the transfer, calling Dana, and ending the conflict. The relatives would praise me for coming to my senses. Brooke would return to her business. Dana would keep the house. The family would resume functioning, but nothing would truly be resolved. Dana would learn that enough pressure could reverse my boundaries. Brooke would learn that accountability was temporary. Caleb would learn that Grandma's distress mattered more than his own dignity. Lucy would learn that even when someone gave her the floor, her mother would still give that person the future meant for her. I put the phone down. The deadline passed. There was no dramatic sound, no announcement, no immediate removal from the house. Monday simply became Tuesday, and the money remained in my account. The lender continued the process created by the existing default. Dana's preferred rescue was gone. For several days, she did not contact me. Neither did Brooke. The quiet felt unfamiliar. I kept expecting another campaign, another relative, or another emergency. Instead, practical reality entered the space where I had always stood. Dana spoke with a real estate agent. She listed the house. When I saw the listing photographs, grief came so suddenly that I had to close my office door. The living room looked smaller than I remembered. The dining table where my father carved Thanksgiving turkeys had been polished until it reflected the chandelier. The porch swing appeared in one photograph beneath the trees he had planted. Then I saw the office daybed, the guest room, the den floor. The house held good memories. It also held the moment my children learned how little space the family expected them to occupy. Both truths could exist at once. I did not celebrate the listing. I did not send Dana a message saying I had warned her. I went home, helped Caleb with his schoolwork, and listened while Lucy explained a drawing she had made. Our ordinary evening felt more valuable than being declared right. Selling the house forced Dana and Brooke to speak openly about money for the first time. Brooke could not repay the loan, but Trevor refused to let her continue pretending the debt had nothing to do with their household. They agreed to contribute toward Dana's moving and transaction expenses. Brooke did so reluctantly. She told relatives Elena had forced her family into financial hardship. but she paid because Trevor was no longer willing to watch my savings serve as the protective wall around their decisions. The house received an offer. Dana rejected the first one because she believed it was too low. The lender's timeline made waiting dangerous. Eventually, she accepted another offer that allowed her to satisfy the secured debt and preserve a portion of the remaining equity. She did not become homeless. She did not lose everything. She lost the house. Those consequences mattered, and I refused to minimize them simply because they proved my decision had been proportionate. Dana moved into a smaller rental condominium. It had fewer rooms, lower monthly costs, and none of the status she associated with the old house. Brooke helped with the move. Trevor paid part of the expense. I did not attend. Dana sent one message while packing, found Lucy's picture frame. Tell her I kept it. I showed the message to Lucy. Grandma still has it? Yes. Is she going to put her new picture in it? I don't know. Maybe. Lucy smiled. The simplicity of her response reminded me that children often leave space for love long after adults turn love into a contest. I did not want to teach her hatred. I wanted to teach her discernment. Dana's move did not restore our relationship. Once the emergency ended, we entered a long period of limited communication. She sent holiday greetings. I replied politely. She asked about the children. I answered without giving her direct access. When she requested a visit, I told her I needed time and consistent respect before that could happen. She accused me once of continuing to punish her. I responded, a consequence is not ongoing punishment simply because trust has not returned on your preferred schedule. After that, she stopped pressing for several weeks. Brooke never apologized. Her final long message accused me of breaking the family, humiliating Dana, involving the children in an adult issue, and using money to prove I was superior. I read it once. Then I archived it without responding. For the first time in my life, I accepted that not every accusation required a defense. Brooke and I became distant. There were no dramatic declarations of permanent estrangement. We simply stopped participating in the old cycle. I no longer solved her problems. She no longer had access to me except through messages I could choose not to answer. Trevor occasionally sent neutral updates about Dana's practical situation. His marriage to Brooke continued, but he became less willing to ignore the cost of her decisions. The family did not transform into a healthier system overnight. It became a system without me absorbing every consequence. Several months after the house sold, Dana asked to meet me alone. No children, no relatives, no discussion of money. We met during the day at a quiet cafe halfway between our homes. When Dana entered, she looked older than she had during the retirement weekend. Not frail, not destroyed, simply changed by a year in which her assumptions had stopped protecting her. She sat across from me and placed her hands around a cup she barely touched. For several minutes, we discussed neutral things. Then she said, I've been trying to decide whether apologizing now would mean anything. That depends on what you are apologizing for. She looked down. For the sleeping bags. I waited. Dana continued. I knew Brooke and Trevor wanted the guest room. Mason complained about sleeping on the floor. I assumed your children would be easier. There it was. Not confusion, not poor communication. A decision based on who would resist and who would adapt. You assumed we would accept less, I said. Yes. Why? Because you always did. The answer hurt, but it was honest. Dana looked at me. I told myself you were stronger. I told myself the children were young and wouldn't care. Then I told myself you were using them as an excuse because you were angry with Brooke. And now? Now I think I was angry because you stopped doing what I depended on you to do. She paused. I called 83 times about the money. I called twice when you left. I had never told her I had made that comparison. She had discovered it herself. I noticed that later, she said. I wish I could explain it in a way that made me sound better. Why did you borrow the money for Brooke? Because I thought I could protect her long enough for the business to work. And why did you expect me to repair it? Because you usually could. That isn't the same as having the right to expect it. I know. She took a breath. I treated Brooke like the daughter who needed me and you like the daughter I needed. I thought relying on you was respect. I didn't understand that I had made your usefulness the price of your place in the family. The apology did not restore my childhood. It did not erase Lucy kneeling beside the sleeping bag or Caleb asking whether Grandma would lose her house because he refused the floor. But Dana was no longer asking for money. There was no deadline. There was nothing she could obtain by saying the words except the possibility of a smaller, more honest relationship. I am sorry, she said. I am sorry I treated Caleb and Lucy as if they would be grateful for whatever was left. I am sorry I expected you to save the house after showing you that I did not make equal room for your family. And I am sorry I blamed you for consequences Brooke and I created. I felt tears rise, but I did not let them turn the moment into instant reconciliation. Thank you for saying it clearly. Do you forgive me? I don't want revenge against you, but forgiveness does not restore trust automatically. Dana nodded. I understand. I need to see consistency. All right. The children will not stay overnight with you. Her expression tightened briefly, then softened. All right. Visits will be during the day, and I will be present. All right. If either child is compared with Mason or made to feel less important, the visit ends. Dana looked hurt, but she did not argue. I understand. That was how our limited reconciliation began, not with a dramatic embrace, not with the family returning to its old shape, with conditions, with observation, with the understanding that biology gave Dana a connection to my children, not unrestricted authority over them. The first daytime visit lasted less than 2 hours. Dana brought the picture frame Lucy had made. This time, it contained a photograph of Dana with all 3 grandchildren rather than only Mason. I noticed the effort. I also watched carefully. When Lucy spoke, Dana listened. When Caleb declined a hug, Dana did not guilt him. When she gave the children small gifts, they were comparable in thought and value. One appropriate visit did not prove permanent change. But it was a beginning. Brooke did not participate. She believed my conditions were insulting and refused to audition for a place in my life. I accepted her decision. Distance was healthier than reconciliation without accountability. Meanwhile, the $58,600 remained where I had left it. I did not spend it impulsively. I did not use it to demonstrate that I had won. I continued working and saving. The housing plan Dana's crisis nearly erased moved forward gradually. I reviewed my budget, protected an emergency reserve, and waited until the right purchase became possible. Eventually, I found a modest 3-bedroom townhouse. It was not grand. The kitchen needed updating. The backyard was small. The hallway light made a faint buzzing sound until I replaced it, but it was stable, affordable, and ours. The day I told the children, Lucy asked one question. Do I get a room? Yes? Only me? Only you. She covered her mouth with both hands and laughed. Caleb tried to look composed, but I saw his smile. Can I choose which one? You can choose between the 2 smaller bedrooms. Does Lucy get the other one? Yes. And nobody can give it to someone else when they visit? The question reminded me that children carry experiences long after adults declare them over. No one will take your room away for a guest? On moving day, Caleb taped a handwritten sign to his door. Lucy arranged stuffed animals across her bed and placed the flowered frame on her dresser. Each room was small. Each room belonged completely to the child sleeping in it. Dana visited once after we settled in. She remained for the afternoon and left before bedtime, respecting the boundary without asking me to change it. She stood in Lucy's doorway and looked at the framed picture. You kept it, she said. Lucy nodded. You kept yours too. Dana smiled, but her eyes filled with tears. Yes, she said. I did. We did not discuss the old house. We did not need to. The contrast was present without being spoken. Months later, on a rainy Saturday, Caleb asked if we could have a camp out in the living room. We made popcorn, moved the coffee table, and brought out 2 sleeping bags. For a moment, seeing them spread across the floor tightened something in my chest. Lucy climbed into hers willingly and zipped it up to her chin. "This is fun," she said. Caleb turned off the lights and used a flashlight to make shapes on the ceiling. The sleeping bags no longer meant that someone else had decided they deserved less. They meant choice. They meant play. They meant a night on the floor followed by the certainty of returning to rooms that belonged to them. After the children fell asleep, I sat nearby and listened to the rain against the windows. I thought about Dana's house. I thought about the transfer. I thought about those 83 missed calls. For a long time, I believed the most important thing I did that night was cancel $58,600. It wasn't. The most important thing I did was stop teaching my children that love required them to accept the least comfortable place in the room. The money mattered because it represented years of work and a future I wanted to build. But the real inheritance I protected was different. Caleb would not grow up believing peace depended on his silence. Lucy would not grow up believing being easy to overlook made her lovable. And I would no longer confuse being needed with being valued. When the campout ended the following morning, we rolled up the sleeping bags together. That night, Caleb returned to his room. Lucy returned to hers. Long after the townhouse became quiet, I stood in the hallway between their doors. A soft nightlight glowed beside Lucy's bed. Caleb had fallen asleep with a book open near his pillow. Both children were safe. Both had a place no one could reassign. I had not protected them by defeating my mother. I had protected them by refusing to continue a family arrangement that required their sacrifice. For the first time in my life, the quiet around me did not feel like rejection. It felt like peace.